Nero went from being once hailed as the golden child of Rome to one of the most terrifying tyrants the empire had ever seen. He ordered horrific executions, exploited his servants, and ruled with an iron fist. But how did Nero turn into this horrible monster? To answer that question, we have to start at the beginning. When he first rose to power, many saw promise in the young emperor. He was just 16 years old, soft-faced and artistic, with a love for music, poetry, and philosophy. He wasn't a brute like some emperors before him, at least. Not yet. To many, he was a breath of fresh air, a boy emperor with a tender heart, a cultured mind, and a dream of a more refined Rome. But that image would not last. As time went on, that gentle mask began to slip, and what emerged was something darker, much darker. Nero didn't just want to rule Rome. He wanted to be worshipped by it. He fancied himself a god, among mortals a man whose voice could move the heavens, whose poetry could outshine Homer, whose face deserved to be immortalized in marble everywhere. He demanded applause even when he sang off-key. He forced senators to sit through his endless performances, sometimes for hours, even days. No one dared leave, not even to use the restroom. Some pretended to die just to escape. But how did he even end up on the throne? He executed his wife, Octavia, accusing her of adultery, though most saw her as innocent. Her head was severed and sent to his second wife as a gift. That second wife, Poppaea Sabina, met a similar fate. Nero kicked her to death while she was pregnant, reportedly during a petty argument. Grief-stricken, or perhaps just consumed by guilt, Nero had her embalmed in perfumes and gold and gave her a funeral so elaborate it rivaled those of Roman gods. Still desperate for love, Nero found a young boy named Sporus, who resembled Poppaea. He married him in a public ceremony, dressed him in silks, called him Empress, and made him live as a stand-in for the woman he had murdered. But perhaps the most enduring tale of Nero's cruelty is also the most debated: the Great Fire of Rome. In the year 64 CE, flames tore through the city for 9 days. Entire districts were reduced to ash. Homes, temples, and markets vanished into smoke. And while thousands fled, Nero was said to have stood on his balcony in theatrical costume, plucking his lyre and singing of Troy's burning. But did Nero really start the fire? To this day, it's not clear. Rumors swirled that Nero had wanted to burn Rome so he could rebuild it in his own Imagia, grand golden capital with a palace at its heart, the Domus Aurea. Whether or not he lit the flame himself, Nero certainly used the fire as an excuse to reshape the city, and he needed someone to blame. He chose the Christian. Rome's tiny Christian population, already disliked for their strange customs, and refusal to worship Roman gods, became the perfect scapegoat. They were arrested by the hundreds. Some were sewn into animal skins and torn apart by dogs. Others were dipped in tar, nailed to crosses, and set on fire to light Nero's garden parties. Guests wandered among the burning bodies, while Nero played music and watched with delight. What had started as a golden boy now looked more like the Antichrist. Agrippina, the younger Nero's mother, was a political mastermind. She'd schemed, seduced, and even poisoned her way through the imperial family to get Nero crowned emperor. At first, she ruled through him. Every decision went through her. She even had a special window cut into the Senate chamber so she could listen in on meetings. But as Nero matured, he grew tired of being her puppet. So he decided to cut the strings. He wanted to kill his mother. Nero first tried to kill Agrippina by collapsing the ceiling over her bed. She survived. Then, he rigged a boat to sink while she was on board. She swam to shore. Finally, he gave up on clever plans and just sent soldiers to stab her to death in her villa. She reportedly said, "Strike the womb that bore him," as the blade fell. With his mother gone, Nero was finally free. Free to do whatever he pleased. And what pleased him wasn't ruling, it was indulging. But his reign only spiraled further into cruelty, paranoia, and delusion. The real horrors were just beginning. Nero imposed brutal discipline in his palace. Servants were beaten for the smallest mistake-spilled wine, wrinkled robes, poorly timed footsteps. One was reportedly tortured for simply sneezing during one of Nero's performances. He didn't see them as people. He saw them as living tool subjects to be used, broken, and replaced. He enforced harsh rules, demanded perfection, and used fear to control every waking moment of those beneath him. The palace wasn't just a place of luxury, it was a gilded prison run on fear. And while the servants suffered under Nero's madness, his closest allies faced an even darker nightmare. By the end of his reign, Rome had had enough. Rebellions broke out across the empire. The Senate declared Nero an enemy of the state. Alone, abandoned, and terrified, the once glorious emperor fled the city disguised as a slave. As soldiers closed in, he stabbed himself in the throat with the help of a servant. He was just 30 years old. Nero's death plunged Rome into chaos. Civil war erupted. The empire nearly collapsed. And yet, even after his death, his myth refused to die. Some believed he hadn't really perished, that he would return like a twisted messiah to reclaim his throne and finish what he started. But in truth, Nero's legacy wasn't divine. It was the tragic consequence of a boy raised by ambition, poisoned by paranoia, and devoured by ego. So what do you think? Was Nero a victim of his upbringing, a tyrant born from absolute power? Leave your thoughts in the comments below.